Hi everyone, welcome to the Jansen Art Studio. I'm Dave Jansen, and we're going to work on some, I'm going to do a panel here, working on some of the halftone roses that you see us use in the books, okay? And I'm going to start out with a real simple little sketch, and then we'll go right into the painting, okay? So let's get going. So what I have down here is my colors, some of the colors that you will see in the book, and in a lot of our lessons. I'll be using a couple of extra colors today as well, but and we'll talk about that if I decide to use them. I want to show you how to use some of these other colors in your paintings. But anyway, let's get into this. So I'm going to use just an old brush, any kind of old brush here. This is a bristle filbert, just an old one that I use to do some simple sketching. Usually when I sketch, I'll use a little burnt sienna. So this is a little bit of burnt sienna, and I put a touch of extender medium in there. Not that I want this to stay wet or anything like that. It's just that this will facilitate it staying wet on the palette. We'll come up here to the palette, and for this we want to do some roses, some halftone roses, and so I'll want maybe a center rose here. I don't always do them, many times I draw them into circles, but I don't always do that. But I will kind of set the gaze of the rose, where I want this one to gaze, and maybe we want this one a little bit more towards the front here, coming at us like here towards the front, like this, just like that. Now, then we'll pick out. Now, don't get it too large compared to your board. You want to leave some negative space out here as well. Let's leave a little spot. Let's maybe come in a more angular petal here. We'll leave a little negative space there, and let's come up and let's draw some angled petals here of a rose that's going to turn here like this. So we'll angle out, directly out. And this is something I like to do. Sometimes I paint roses as start them out as circles, and sometimes I start them out more triangular shape like this, the little petals, little points. This is different roses, and have different varieties. They look different, and so you'll get some of those in there. Now, I've got this one just a bit big, so some of the edges I might want to take in. I want to keep my main, I always call it the queen here, the most dominant of all the roses, and here, and we might just increase her power just a bit here, put a little bit of that extra petals on. I try to keep it very casual. Let's make this one coming down at an angle here a little bit more formal, which means they will touch each other. Let's put the gaze pulling down just a bit. Now, I've got to be a little careful here. Just line those up a bit. So maybe we'll shift the gaze down, and we'll shift that rose down just a bit. I don't want them quite in a line here. So let's just shift this one down just a little bit like this, and down. We'll get some points out here. We'll be able to do it. Now, take the viewer's eye off of that. Let's put another one right up over here. And we'll put a little bit of that gaze there. Let's get a little bit more of our burnt sienna here, and come out here like this. Just light sketching here. That's kind of pretty. I always like to follow some of the, botanical painters, in that they like to add another version of it, like a juvenile or a rose here that's not quite opened up. So maybe we'll put a little petal of one off of there, maybe a back side of one right into here or something, so that maybe a smaller little bud right out over here, so that you get the variety to the sizes. Let's put one right back up over here as well. Still not quite happy with that. We'll see how it goes with that coloring and stuff here. But you could take that off just by dropping maybe another formal one right up underneath here that will occupy this space here, and this one will push back. This one will tighten back up here a bit. And so you can see I can adjust the lines. I don't worry about really about getting anything absolutely perfect, because I'm going to be putting on a background here. Many times I put on a background, and as I'm putting on the background, I'll do a little bit of negative painting in there and take out anything that I really don't want to keep there. Now, other beautiful things that you can do as a rose painter is, the trinity of petals and stuff. So if I wanted to have, we call it the trinity of petals. The rose petals usually comes out in sets of three, or excuse me, leaves. I'm saying petals, and I mean leaves. And so you can put some of those out to see. Maybe we keep these, maybe we forget about them. But I just kind of see how my design is going to come forward here. I like that. I like that movement of those, right there like that, and calyx and stuff. So that looks pretty good. That's enough for, and you can look at it. I'll look at it in that monitor right there. I'll step back and see, okay, that looks pretty good. Now, stepping back and looking at it, how we would say optically, and you'll read about it a lot in the book I write about optics. So when you step back, the viewer's eye tends to soften the painting because of optics, and that's what we want to do here. So we want to, every once in a while when you're painting like this, you want to step back and look at it and see just how much, especially when you're going to deal with halftones, because halftones are basically versions or ways in which the painter or the artist is going to blend their colors. We don't go in there and formally blend and create a smooth transition of colors. You want to leave those strokes and everything on there. That gives movement, interest, okay? So when you have difference between your tones, that's movement and interest. And so you want to leave some of that. How much do you leave? It depends on how far back you're going to look at the painting. So most artists, like I say in many of our videos and stuff, is most artists will, leave it anywhere between 6 and 10 feet. I always say, when we're decorative painters, we would always paint it about 1 to 3 feet, about what we paint here. And it looked great. And then you hang it on the wall, everything looks plastic. So it takes a certain amount for you to, as an artist, to learn to see like that, and learn to see just how much of that is going to cover up, or how much of that is optically going to blend. So what looks really rough up into the front part of it here, when you step back and you look back at a camera there on a monitor, doesn't look quite so rough. Not as much as what you see here when you're looking at this here. You see all these rough strokes here, see? And those rough strokes in that same area are a little bit softer back there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is work a little bit, just a little bit of my background. I've got a couple of things I want to address. Some of it is the greenery that I'm going to add into there. And usually I'm going to come in, I usually like to come in with just a real toned green. I love to work with the pine green and burnt sienna, one of the colors we just used. And I want to keep this right now today. I'll keep it a little darker. Let's just grab some of this burnt sienna in here. Maybe around into the center, my center of interest right in here. So for right now, I might come in here and just block in a little bit. Now, I use a tremendous amount of differences of tones here. Oh, and some of you that don't know, I'm painting on glass here. This is a 1/4 inch tempered glass that has been sanded on the edges, so the edges of it here are nice and smooth. They don't cut you or anything like that. I love to paint on the glass because it gives me a nice clear indication of the color. It also helps me tell just how transparent something is when I start to add stuff to it. You can look at the transparency through glass. But it also allows me to put a board, like here I have a light colored board, which is about the value of my background, so I can see that. Sometimes we can put, just the same color of background we're working on, and we can see exactly the tone that we're working on in a particular area. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to add a little bit of my dark contrast color. I'm not going to be perfect in here right now. Just a few where I might want to see. Some of this might become rose later on. Some of this will stay soft. Some of this will soften out. This is just a real dark right now. This is what we call the formal area of the leaves, and I'm going to keep it kind of toned. Some burnt sienna and some pine green here, kind of toned, and work out here. I'll soften this all out with a halftone. I'll show you a background halftone here in just a minute. So this is what we would call a high contrast painting here. Now, maybe I want to have quite a bit more dark down here. Maybe I want to soften it out. I don't know yet. Well, I do. I have kind of an idea. But if I want to soften it out, then I'll go to a halftone. Now, what is a halftone? Since the value of my background here is about the value of my background of my board, value, which is a measure of light and dark within a painting. And what you're going to do is come in with a halftone. Now, in the first lesson of the book, the halftones that I show you is a soft progression building these yellow roses. And I come in and I just go a halftone up, a halftone up. And a halftone is really basically a halfway between, like, say, a value 6 and a value 7. If you want more contrast, yeah, it can be a value 6 and value 6 to a 7. In most paintings, something to remember, in most paintings, when you're painting for roundness, artists will jump no more than 2 values at a time. So when you go in and you're doing blocking in or working with something, if you block something in as a 6 and you're going to go to the light, then your next value you'd block in is an 8. That's generally, not everyone, because every artist is going to vary their technique, but that's just a general way to look at it, okay? So a halftone then would be a 7, one right between the two. If you're working for a smooth, if you say, I'm going to approach this very, very soft, and I block in with a 6, and then my next contrast color is a 7, then your halftone would be a 6.5. It would be something right between the two. That's what you're doing. And how much you leave, that becomes very important. Because if I leave, let's say I leave between a 6 and a 7, from about 5 or 6 feet, that's going to blend really nice. It's going to soften really, really nice to the eye. If I leave it between a 6 and an 8, that's going to, you're going to see that stroke in more detail at 6 to 10 feet. So, you have to, this is where the artist has to determine, is this hanging on a wall? Where's someone going to look at it? And how much do I leave? Okay? So, I know this is about the value of my background here. So what I'm going to do is, matter of fact, I don't want to get my white all dirty here right now. I just got a brand new container of white here, so I don't want to get it all dirty. I'm just going to put some of this right down over here to work in for a few minutes here. And what I'm going to do is just take some of this, and I'm going to come in with a tone here that is going to be about halfway between what I just applied. It's got just a touch too much white. Right about halfway between what I just applied in darkness and this here, this background, or the background that I have here. So if I go to push this onto here right there, it's a little bit softer. Now I can go just a touch lighter there. Let's put a little bit more light into that, and let's see what that would look like right there on top of that right there. So you can see there's going to be a difference. Now if this was full strength, it's a little transparent. If this was full strength here, you would see more of a halftone, a tone that is light in value. So this is my lightest color, this is my halftone, this is here. Now, as I am painting, let's say I really want to soften an area here, I could soften that again with another halftone. By lesson number 4 in the book, you're working with multiple halftones, which is I would come in, if I was softening this against the background, I would soften one more halftone like this. So I go a halftone lighter, so the eye is transferring this way through it, but you still see the stroke that's right there. And so here, if I want this a little softer, let's just put just a little bit more of a halftone here. Matter of fact, let me come in here and just darken this down. Let's do this so you can see it really easy here, since some of you probably have never heard of this before. Let's get that nice opaque in there, okay? Now, so what this is now sitting as a real nice halftone, halfway between this value and this value that's here. So if I take some of that and if I strike that against that edge right there, like that, and that would be considered halftone. Sometimes I'll pull through the color like that and break that little edge. And this is what I want to do. You see, I see that color traveling there pretty easy. Let me go up just a bit here so you can see that a little more to the center of your screen. So I see that traveling there. Now let's take a look at it up here close. You see that. Now if we go back, let's go back over here to this monitor here, and you look at that, you see a softer transition of the tones there. You see some of the movement that's there. And if I put my tones in there any softer or take any additional strokes, it'll look softer. Let's come back up over here for a second. Okay, so there's a little bit of a stroke line here. If I break that, just lightly break that with my brush like this, wipe my brush, Let's break this. And this is what's called breaking the tone here. If I break that like that, you'll see a smoother transition. And by the time you go back and look at that monitor there, when I'm looking at it there and that monitor there, from that far away, it becomes quite a bit softer. And that's what we talk about, the optical part of the blending. So now I've got a darker tone, I've got a half tone, and because I broke those tones, or what I call incorporated those two colors together a little bit, sliding those tones across from each other, you see more of a definite between the tones. If I leave that definite strike between that tone there and this half tone that sits here like this, then yes, the eye will blend them. The eye will still soften them a little bit. But, how much of this line you leave becomes a signature of your technique. I can run through one more time like that, just one time, and take a little bit of that line away, and that whole technique there becomes softer. Now, if I wanted to soften one more time to the background, I would lighten this back up again right into here. We're pretty close to what my background is. Right in here. Doesn't have to be perfect. This has to be closer. And I come right in here like this. And now I've softened that one more time to the background. So now I've got a smoother transition of my tones. And I can go all the way to the background tone here like this. And you can see that smooth transition of that tone just by working that background. Now, these half tones applies to warms, to cools, to accent tones, to whatever. But it's looking, when you're talking about the tone, that's what you're talking about. The color's value, its intensity, and its temperature. How it's fitting within a particular color passage. What we call a color passage, an area of color into the thing. So here, I'm going to leave this down here. Matter of fact, I want just a little bit more movement down through here. I'm going to leave some of that, but I'm going to add a little bit of movement into my painting today here. And I might just soften those edges out here for right now, just a bit. I like to have movement. I like crazy movement within my painting now. Not always, but many times. And so I'm just going to soften this out here like this a bit. I can come back and revisit some colors. Sometimes I'll take my paper towel through here like this. But in a lot of paintings, in a lot of commission work that I do, they love this type of movement. And I look up at this and I'm looking at a monitor right here, which is really great because this monitor that's here, and this is how I do it in the studio when I'm filming. I have a big monitor that's right here. And when I'm looking at that one that's right there, I can look at it from the painting from about 1 to 2 feet. So it's just if I step back like this and look at it, okay? And then that one right there puts it at about 6 feet, 6 or 7 feet right there. And I can see from, how it looks like at 1 foot right there, 1 to 2 foot right there, and how it looks from 6 to 7 feet. So when I'm painting the DVD, you'll see me many times look at that monitor or look at that monitor there. I'm looking how it looks like because I can't get up from my chair here always and step back, which is something that I recommend you do quite often when you're painting at home. But I kind of like that movement that's right down there. So I'll take a little bit of that movement. And we'll add some of that right back down in here. That's just real nice background movement into the painting here. We'll come back. We'll go to a darker tone right over here, which is more of our shadow tone. Let's work some of that in. And sometimes I'll take that tone, a little bit more burnt sienna here. So this time it's a little more burnt sienna. Now I have my burnt sienna there and I have my light tone. I'll just come right in between the two. I'm watching that tone and this one right here. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to come somewhere right between the two here. And then I have a softening tone right here that I can use to work on that. Or I can go slightly, another little half tone lighter here, and soften some of that right out to here like that. So I'm always, as I'm painting, I'm always watching those tones, how these tones are appearing onto the painting. And if I get something a little bit too aggressive or something, I can just soften it out a bit and just enjoy the movement of it a bit here. Let's come around and let's just push a little bit of this around. And I want to soften some of this as it goes to the outside here. And I can always come back, revisit any of this later, softening some of this even more a little bit later on. But I like that. I like, this type of movement. And the paper towel just works wonderful out there for this type of movement into the back. Many times I'll take this and we'll add a blue. And lately I've been using a lot of cerulean blue. You can use cerulean blue or you can use a phthalo blue or something. I love this cerulean. I've been using it in a lot of rose mulling books and everything lately. Basically because I was doing a lot of watercolor, and it's a very popular color in watercolor, and I really need everyone to start to learn how to use that if we're going to do some of these other things. Let's go down just a bit. And because it's a beautiful, beautiful tone, and it's, as far as a blue, it's a lot easier blue to use than phthalo blue. I use the phthalo blue just because it has a lot of power in it, allows a lot of contrast and stuff with it, and it's an easy color mixer. But the cerulean is more of a popular amongst a lot of casual painters, and especially in a lot of water artists, watercolor artists, and pure acrylic artists that are using colors like watercolor or gouache. And so it's a color that we should learn how to use, and so we'll use a little bit of it to learn how to use it. It's softer, it's easier. I've been using it in some landscapes and some other things, so if you have some of that, it's a good one to try. If you don't, if you have just phthalo, just put out some phthalo and quite a bit more white here. And cerulean is just a little bit less intense, so you might want to add a touch of your burnt sienna or something like that to it. I'm just going to model these together here, and this is where you get another tone. So I have this other darker green over there. I'm going to put a little bit of my green into that and put a half tone right between. See how it's a softer tone right there? It's right between my green and my blue right here. And so the viewer will see a transition of those tones coming around here like that. Isn't that pretty? And so when you take that knowledge that I'm going to move colors around like this in tones, you know, it's really a lot of fun. Let's just make that medium tone, a little blue and a little green together, all the way back up over here on this side, because that's a beautiful tone. Let's just run those two tones together right here. And they're pretty close already together, so I can just run them together pretty much. And I love just that streakiness. You can run through like that and get some of that look through there. Let's just grab a little bit of that up here. And let's just put in what I call a focus or a spot color of that, a little more blue into that, right into there like that. Sometimes those are kind of fun to run into a painting that gets what we call the unexpected look to the painting, and I really like to have those show up every once in a while. Or, you know, maybe I'll come up and say, okay, I'm really gonna, and it's hard to get cerulean because cerulean is so much softer in many aspects. It dies real quick when you add a color to it. But you know, we'll come up here and just get like a blue that's right in there like that. Just a nice blue that our roses and stuff here will play against. Right in there like that. And, you know, sometimes I get a little mark like that, which is a, you know, unincorporated color on the side of my brush. Sometimes I leave it, and sometimes, you know, I'll go right through it and soften it out. It all depends on what it looks like in the monitors or at 6 feet. Let's carry that strike right on through, right down through here like that. And sometimes I do that. It makes a passage, a light passage through the painting. Especially if I'm going to have that trinity of leaves there or something like that, a light passage through the painting works really nice. Sometimes I add it now, sometimes I add it after the painting. You know, when I started to paint more gallery techniques, optical techniques, and, you know, started selling my paintings more into the fine art world, I started to do a lot more of this light passage stuff because that's the looks that really sell. Now, check it, step back and check it. Yeah, that really looks quite soft, actually, from that monitor there. It looks pretty soft. And when you check that one over there, you can see some of the interest in it. That means someone walking up at about 6, 7 feet is going to see it kind of soft. They walk up a little closer and they go, wow, that's really nice. That you can see some of that movement in there. All right, sometimes they go, whoa, that's really a lot of contrast, or that's really unrefined is a good way to put it. That's really unrefined. Now, with my brush here that has a lot of white in it, this is a number 10. What I like to do a lot of painting with is a number 8 or a number 10 flat. Sometimes I'll go right into the small ones. I usually use, you know, I've been influenced by so many painters over the years, and there was Helen Van Wyck back in the 80s and 90s. I loved her style of painting, and teaching was amazing. And, you know, she always said that you start a painting with the broom and finish it with a needle. I mean, you just get that small. So you would start it with larger brushes, finish it with smaller brushes. And the artist thinking is always going from large to small, large areas of tone, and then refining that tone further down. And so I like to approach that. I'm going to approach that here today with this. I'm going to start out with, I really want to have some white kind of roses in the center. Now, I've already keyed off a pine green and burnt sienna. I'm going to put some of that down in here. That's a good neutral color. We also had some cerulean blue. And I'll put those out to here. So I put those together here like this. Burnt sienna and cerulean blue are beautiful together as a gray color, as a gray tone. Now, it might appear, we'll put just a little bit of light with that. It might appear just a bit cool, which that does, which we can change with a touch of, say, yellow oxide, which will warm that up. This will make you a nice gray. Basically, when I'm painting whites, I'm taking as many colors from the composition as possible and tossing it into that white until I make this gray. And then I add white to get a nice medium value in there that I want to start my painting at, or that particular rose at. Say a 5 or a 6. On a painting like this, it's got to be up at least at the value of its background, somewhere right around there. You don't have to be perfect, just somewhere right around in there. And then I'll go adjusting the tones from there and adding other colors. So, I'll toss in as many colors as I know. And so this is just a good, nice neutral type of gray. Let's come in here. And that's just basically the background, pretty close to the background there, or the original background that you see up there. So I'm looking at that. I'm just going to push in some of these things here that might be petals and stuff like that. And I'm just giving a nice little bit of wet color. Now, in this composition, I don't expect all of them to be white roses, but I might put a little bit of this tone. I'm an artist that believes, you can change the colors of these roses, but you should travel the tone. So I should put a little bit of this tone traveling through some of these other, what will be roses and stuff here later on. And that's what I'm going to do there. Doesn't necessarily have to be perfect at all. We're just going to travel some of that. So now I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, okay, I need to get the centers. Now, I usually use a red violet. I've been lately using a lot of quinacridone to change up my colors a little bit. Quinacridone's really cool. I'm going to gray it with just a bit of, you can gray it with a bit of your pine green. You can even toss in a touch of your burnt sienna. And because I want cool, but I don't want it super, super cold. And we'll use that to help us define where that center is here. Just kind of up and around like this, where that center is on this rose, which we're going to have just slightly gazing top. I don't like it to come right at us, but just slightly gazing top. The other thing that I'll do is put a little bit here to the low side where the shadows are going to be there onto the rose. And let's gaze this one slightly up this way. It's going to be a little bit of a bowl. Let's drop some down here. So this is really casual painting that I'm doing. So you see me in the book start out some very casual like this and some a little bit more controlled. I like to do both. Let's just drop some of this cool all the way down in here. And we're going to push a whole rose down here. Let some of those tones just come together here. And that really makes it pretty. Let's put a little bit of that on the bottom low side if my light's coming in like this. So I'm going to put it in by the calyx side of the rose and down to the bottom side of the rose because the light's coming in and hitting through here. We're artists of light. We must always paint the light. And I just finished teaching a seminar with some friends, and that's something that even as no matter how long you've been painting, sometimes we get so much into the painting we forget about the light, always tracking the light in our paintings. And it's something that is so very, very important. The other thing is I'm using these long handle brushes that allows me to keep, you can notice right now when I'm scrubbing, I'm way back on the handle. And that allows me to really keep casual. And you can see the colors are going on in a real casual presentation. I love it. It stays casual. So here's this rose. It's going to gaze down. This one's going to gaze slightly up. That one's going to go that way there. And that'll work great. Let's put a, let's just get a cooler, let's push another almost oval, kind of roundish type of shape here as a back rose. Maybe there's something back up over here. I like to have that through light will hit that really nice. You know, maybe there's going to be another one right back in here. Always kind of suggest it's its bowl and the inside of it there. I'll use the brush very flat sometimes like this to push color around. So, and that's what I'm looking for, is just to change some of that up. So I've got a light coming in. I've got where my centers and stuff are going to be. Sometimes I'll push this around with my finger to do the incorporation. And you'll see that and you get kind of a nice look there. But I don't always do that because it depends on how much optical stuff I'm going to do. Since this is all on the halftones, and really when I do that with a lot of Paint It Simply. When I go into a lot of halftones is when I really want to have the artistic brush, the power of the brush, come out into the painting. So I don't touch it as much with my finger. I will every once in a while, but that incorporates the tone. And when you incorporate the tone like that, that's what we call it Paint It Simply. When you incorporate the tone like that, you don't need really the halftone. So it's kind of like which one you're going to use. And each one will give you a different look. And sometimes in a painting, I'll combine both. And, you know, sometimes I'll leave the power of the halftone. So I'm going to leave the power of the halftone sitting today. I'm going to take some yellow oxide down here. And we'll hit it with just a little bit of that grays and our whites and some of our colors here from our quinacridone cooler color here. And let's just push a little bit of that into what we consider the warm side of the rose. Now I haven't decided which ones are really white and which ones are yellow or anything like that yet, because I'm going to change some of the colors here. What I'm looking at now is just warm and cool and a little bit of the shape, getting a little of the shape in and doing it as quickly as possible so that I can keep this painting very loose and expressive. So we'll put just a touch of that back into that one there. Just a little bit of that right back in there. That's pretty good. And let's build this up in here. That just a bit more. That's good. Now, I'm going to decide, you know, I've got to decide I want to build in just a little bit more of my greens. I'm going to take some burnt sienna and some green, and I'm going to add some of my quinacridone violet to that. That's going to make me a real cool green, nice, cool, shadowy green. You can see the darkness of that there. That's going to allow me, this shadow is very important. That's going to allow me to really contrast my flowers here. So I can push some of that shadow in here. If I decide something is too much, I'll put a halftone. So let's say I come right up into here. Boom, boom. And now I'm right up here. Now, a lot of people will thin it out. In Paint It Simply, we would go like this and push that back and forth like that, and that would soften that tone. It actually creates a halftone in there. But what I'm going to do is just show you here. Let's push that nice green that's right in there. Now I want to create a halftone between that green and my blue. So I just reach right over here to my light blue, and I'll come right in here, just like what your finger did. But this allows you to leave more of the power of the stroke in there, and that doesn't do it quite as soft as the finger does there. And so, but the nice thing about doing this too is I can change that tone up. Let's add a little bit more green to it. Let's get a little more pine green, a brighter green, and let's put that tone in there. And maybe a little more green right in there like that. And so this is where you see a lot of beautiful today's contemporary painters, or Richard Smith and stuff. They'll come in and they'll work this type of tones, this type of way in, and they'll look at the expression of one tone to the next tone, and they'll come in and they'll soften some areas or put something in. Let's get a little bit more of a light if I wanted to soften that out. And so they're watching the movement of their tones to the movement of their painting here, and you can soften it out that way. You know, and now you know why we call it Paint It Simply, because you can go in there with Paint It Simply real quick and put on another green stroke and just stroke it like that. And if you're an oil painter, don't do that, because the oils, many of them can give you some, allergic reactions, some health problems and stuff like that. With the heritage like this, you don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to take a little bit of that green. Let's take some of our blue and white. Let's just lighten that up just a bit here. Make it just a touch softer. I just want to have a soft And I just want to, before I lose them, state here. Yeah, that's pretty soft. Let's state some of these trinities of these leaves that we might have here, these leaf shapes here. And so I'll put those on there like that. That'll be that one. Now, a lot of times, if I'm studying artists, like Franz Mortemans and stuff, he does his leaves a little bit more of almost a circular. I do them mostly as an oval. But, true, in true, many types of varieties of rose leaves are almost round. Now, if I want to go darker, half-tone darker, I take a little bit of green, a little bit more of my violet here, and I can look right here on my palette, and I can see I'm going to be quite a bit darker. So I'd say, okay, I'd look at this, and if I strike that shadow right on there like that, I know I'm quite a bit darker. I can see that. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's just see how would you get out of this with a halftone. So I'll go ahead and put that on. Again, following kind of my light, leaving where the light would be to where the dark is. Now to soften that, all I do is come right between the two with a halftone. And usually I like to have a little more green into that. So I'll look for a color that's going to be right between the two. And that's what I put right on the edge of that one that's right there. So I'll put that on the edge. Sometimes I follow the structure of the leaf. Sometimes I just do its own stroke and let the light kind of take off. Sometimes I'll hit a little bit more red or something to an edge like that and push it right back in. We'll go a little bit lighter right here and just soften that edge like that. Now, how much you do up close here, looking at that monitor there, up close, that's a little harsh. Back there, it looks great. So, it's kind of like step back and see just how much you want to do. That stroke really softened it out a little more than I wanted to. So maybe I'll restate that shadow right like that. But in a lot of halftone paintings, I'll leave a strike or a stroke like that. Sometimes, many times in the leaves, I'll go ahead and divide them in half with like a vein line or something like that. And I'll take a real light stroke to the light side and leave more of a shadow stroke down underneath. I like that look too. There's just all kinds of looks, and the thing is, don't touch them too many times. I tend to overpaint them, and I'm still trying to break some of those habits of overpainting them. And that's the stuff we all have to do. Learn how to get away and get more casual and stuff. And everyone always writes, oh, wow, I love how casual you paint. Well, no, not always. I have habits too. I'm trying to break them. But that's a real quick little statement there of what a halftone would look like. Let's just give a little bit of a stem movement in there for right now. We have another tone that's coming out a little cooler, a little more this. Let's get right back up over here to this side. Let's just put these in. Now, that doesn't mean these are done. We can always come back and revisit these later. I will especially revisit these after I do more on the roses here. Maybe we'll come out here a little farther and go a little bit more of the round shape of like a Franz Mortemans or something like that. Some of those there. Get that shape a little different. You can come in and put a lighter little stroke. Let's get a little more green. Halftone lighter green, a little brighter right here. And just hit the top part of that leaf there like that. And again, if that's not too harsh there, I will just darken this just a bit. A little bit of the original gray in there. Create that halftone and strike right there like that and soften that out. Let some of that green come through. Rather than taking a blending stroke, you create a halftone. And why? A lot of people say, why? Why don't you just take a blending stroke? Because you incorporate the colors so much, the colors lose their identity. And what we're doing here is we're getting you to practice some of this, so later on, when you start striking these tones, your painting has so much more power. Every time, and Sargent said that, every time you strike your brush, the stroke loses its power. And so we want to be able to keep that power to our painting, and we don't want to make our paintings too soft. And that's where a lot of people always comment, "Oh, your paintings have power," and they are. They're getting more as I'm learning to just leave some of the stuff alone. Stop painting, leave some of the stuff alone. Just put some stuff out there and just leave it. And then you start to get interest. So I start, running around, and I love the cool tones. I really love here in the last few months of painting with this pine green and quinacridone. That's beautiful. Step way back on your long handle brush and just come in here like this and just get some of this. Now, if that's too dark, get it a half tone lighter, or come in and touch a little half tone on it. But this is my shadow side of my composition here, so I might want to, and let some of these violets just show up into your leaves down here like this. That's pretty. Let some of that stuff happen. And let some of those violets, hit inside of these greens. This is the contrasting strokes. And then, do I come back and soften some of this? Well, that's all going to be up to you later on. Let's go back up a tone or so lighter and grayer here. Maybe if I'm going to head back up here, I'll get that even softer and grayer so it sits back, way back behind, really gray. Way back behind this one up here. I'm watching its expression with this other rose back here. Let's just take out some of that right there. Let that rose sit way in the back. Maybe a little more green, not too much lighter or darker. A little more green as it comes back here. That will give a different look to this leaf here, and around and out. And maybe a few leaves right out here. Matter of fact, this is coming to the light side. We can even get a little yellow in there and a little lighter green and yellow, maybe even a little Hansa into that so it gets warmer. Just a touch of our quinacridone so it's softer. But we can get a lighter, warmer green expression right up into this area. Not doing too much leaves yet, and I'll put a little bit of that tone up there. Just grabbing some of that. So I'll be developing basically a lighter edge, warmer color right there on some of these leaves right here. And maybe push some of this in softer out through here. Just touches. We'll add other things. We'll do other grays and colors and stuff, but that just starts to model it up. Model up your center here also with some colors, and just a little bit of that movement here. But as I go down, I start to think down, drop the tone down. Always going down, drop the tone down in value, drop the tone, cool it down with a little bit of my quinacridone here, drop it down here to where I am away from the light down here. And so I can start to generate a light section, the dark section. Here's a little bit of my lighter, warmer green, maybe a stroke up onto that. And I'll look at that. I can brighten that up. Let's put just a touch of that brighter right there onto that part of the leaf. Maybe an indication of a vein line there. You can, put a lighter indication of that vein line there like that. Just push that right into the leaf. Painting casual. You're painting casual here. And, I use the corner of the brush and all different kinds of things. Okay, so that sets us up some general movement into the painting. Step back and take a look. And I'm stepping back and taking a look there. I'm kind of liking it. The bouquet is advancing a little bit off the painting here. I'm going to just rinse some of that green out of my brush. Not all of it, just a little bit of it. And I'm stepping back and I'm looking at that and I'm going, yeah, okay, that works pretty good. Let's come back into here and let's go, okay, here's my grays. Let's get some of our yellows back into some of these grays here. We're going to want to paint some yellows. I'm going to paint my white flowers right from this dirty part of this painting here. I'm going to grab a big old dollop of that has that green in there. I'm going to paint my white flowers, white and some yellow flowers right into here because this is really where I love to paint. This is where I get the greatest harmony here. I'm going to take some nice, thick, not quite a 10. This is down to about an 8 or so here. And I'm going to change the position of my hand because this is what I like to do with my first strike. I want to open this rose up and stuff, so I don't want to go too high with the bowl here. And I want to push in a stroker there. Now that's a contrasting stroke here that is going to, and I step back and take a look at it, that is really kind of setting, how much contrast do I want to have on this particular part of the painting. And I know I'm down into here, so to soften it with that, I now come down into a half tone. So I'm going to look right down about, this is where I am, this is where I was. I'm going to look right back down about here as a potential half tone to soften that stroke here. And a half tone here to soften the edge of that stroke there. Let's come back and let's just take a half-tone stroke there. And so now I've softened that back a little bit. Let's soften the back edge of this. Let's use the lower half-tone here. And let's just push some of that color right down into here to soften that edge. I'm going to take a contrast. Now, I'm not structuring the rose perfect right now, but I'm going to take another big dollop of that texture here like this, and I'm going to push this right out here onto this edge of that rose here where these petals might be right out here. I'm going to have that petal that's right out there. And again, I'm going to paint this one really casual for you today here. So I'll do that. Now, right inside of this, I have a bowl shadow that's in there. Now, a lot of times I'll wipe my brush. Now, sometimes I will just pick that up with Paint It Simply. With a halftone, what I'll do is I'll load in that darker, a little bit darker halftone, a little cooler. Let's get, there you are, you quinacridone, get over here. A little quinacridone into that. Let's cool that down. So I'm going to drop it down a couple values here like this. I'm going to put that into my brush. I'm going to start right out here like this, and I'm just going to lift off. And notice I'm way back on the handle of my brush. That keeps the tip of this really soft. Every once in a while, wipe that extra white off of your brush here like this. That's very important. Wipe it off. Let's just lift off like that. Wipe it off. Put that other half tone right in there. And just soften that out a bit. Now, I will take that extra half tone and help soften that right up against that edge there because it is slightly different tone. So I'll slighten that around like that. Now, if I wanted that smoother, I could come right between those two tones with a half tone. So I'll come right between those two tones right here. I'm looking at that one to this one right here. And I'll look and see, do I need another strike right there of that particular tone? And you step back and you look at it and go, well, that's starting to get a little smooth back there. I definitely see it here. From 1 to 2 feet, I see it. And maybe I'll leave that for right now. And I'll just stroke a couple of times there like that. Sometimes, I'll bring back, and when you start to look at this, go back and look at some of my paintings. Sometimes I'll bring back a little more of a contrast shadow right inside of that and lift off a bit. And then if I get too much there, I'll soften that off with a bit of a half tone right in there. But I'll start to stroke those tones many, many times here. Let's come in here with not quite as light a half tone as it's in the front. So not quite as much of a tone that's in the front. Let's come right around here like this. Let's just push some right into there. I'm going to add just a touch of extender. Sometimes I thin my color out a little bit with extender so it doesn't have as much power as textures as the front of that does. I'm going to go back to my light tone up here in the front. Maybe not completely as light. We'll drop it down just a bit. And let's just give a little more shape. Now, I wanted this rose to open up a bit more, so I might take some of that back just a bit. And let's put a little bit of our opening shape to our bowl here, so that opens this rose up. Just some quick strikes here. Movement strikes. That's all I call it. That's what I call them, is movement strikes here. And let's get a little bit more of a petal that's opened like this, curving around like this. That opens up the rose a bit more here. Let's open that rose up just a bit more. I'll restate sometimes. Let's get a little bit of our quinacridone and some green and restate, pushing around some of those half tones, of a half tone darker, but not as dark as my original one there. So I just take some of that in my green, and I'm looking right about a color in there that is just a half tone darker. See, so sometimes I set the half tone, and you'll see it in the book. Sometimes I set the half tone lighter. Sometimes I set the half tone darker as I'm working through some of the light source, which is when I'm going to work through the light source on this particular rose. Let's push in a little bit of that light out here. Now, instead of going, I might go a little bit darker here to soften that out and even take some of that out a little further so that petal becomes softer, all the way softer there. So I don't lose my light dark into my painting here too much. It's going to go back to a little bit of quinacridone, a little bit of green into it, which is what I really like on the shadow part of that rose there. Put a little bit of this tone right in there as a nice shadowy tone. I'm liking the contrast that's giving it right in there. Let's just go bang. You can see that beautiful contrast that that's giving in there. Now, what do? You've got this to that right there. So you've got this color to that one right there. Just come right in between the two. Right in between the two. And drop that right there. And boom, that becomes soft and pretty. Get rid of that one little edge right there. Just like that. Watch the movement. You know, sometimes I'll stroke the movement of my petals. Got a little bit of an edge right here, a little bumpy part that's bothering me. Get that halftone right there and soften that out. Let's soften that edge out. Soften that edge out. Now that shadow sits in good form inside of that rose there. Isn't that cool? That's how it works. So you have to kind of change the way that you're thinking as an artist to paint that way. Instead of going in there and trying to blend it, you know, put that color on and then work and blend it. And then those colors incorporate so much and they lose their identity. You know, we don't want to do that. We want to keep the tone, the tonal strength, the power of that stroke. So we got to apply these as independent colors or independent strokes. Let's go back and let's restate some of our lights back up here again. Work these lights. Now this time, since I have those halftones in there, I can slide these in as just mostly tonal strokes here and say, okay, I really want that rose, that stroke of that rose to be up like that. And maybe I'll leave that nice, and you can see that nice texturing there. On that camera there, you can't see it as much, but up close onto this one, you see the textures. And textures are so important to the beauty of or the optics of a flower. And so, you know, we should try to paint with some of these textures as much as possible. Let's put a little bit of a textured strike here to the edge of this petal, maybe rounding over like that, a little bit of movement, maybe a bit of an edge right here. Maybe we'll define that edge of that rose like that just a bit and let it just hit some of that green. So when I'm painting halftone, see, I'm going up a halftone lighter now each time, so I don't have to put a halftone in. I'm watching the tone that I have here and just going up a halftone lighter. Here now, I'll go back down darker here because I'm going to come down to this side over here, and I want just a tone, just a little bit again, a halftone lighter than what I have on the lower section of this rose, just so I can do a little petal shaping here, like that, and get some variation to that rose. Let's go a halftone. Let's keep that halftone darker and grayer. Let's get it grayer here and do a little bit of shaping back there. Maybe a little touch lighter. Working just a halftone, not a full tone, a halftone. Darker or lighter here just to shape some back potential petals here to give a little interest to like the back of that rose. Maybe because we've opened this rose up, so we're going to have some more petals to this side over here. Here, opening up to this side. See, the viewer will see them more because this rose opens up to this side. So we'll give a little bit of our tonal, a little bit of our movement here to that part of the rose. A little bit to this edge here, right in here like that. Pull that down just a bit. Now, I'll go a half tone darker and cooler into my violets here, and let's just take some of that out. Just leave a little bit of that movement. See, I like to touch and hit the movements a bit here as well, because that adds interest of the movement within the bowl. So, and I do that always with a half tone of my brush. Here's a half tone dark. It's not a full dark that I have to worry about blending it. Anytime I'm working in a half tone, I don't have to worry about blending it. And I can carry some of these tones right up here really pretty without having to worry about blending it or taking an extra incorporation stroke or sticking my finger in it because I'm watching the tone, the actual half tone itself here. Okay, so now I'm gonna go full up here. So I'm really gonna kind of set my rose here, how light I really want this rose here and where I really want that light. This is my white with just a little bit of my yellow in it here. And I'm going to set that real nice, powerful color there. Drop it back down to that half tone right in there and just soften that edge. Right like that. Maybe across there just a bit. And sometimes I'll lift out and sometimes I'll pull in or wipe my brush and pull in a little bit. I'm just watching the edges there, breaking the edges. Maybe a bit more light right out here onto the edge of that one right there like that. So I'm going to head this rose right to the light, into a few areas right there, right into the light here. Let's put just a little bit more of the light right up onto this edge here. There's another little tiny light strokes, strikes of it right there. So this is almost pure white with a little bit of yellow into it that allows this rose really to strike here and to get this beautiful, beautiful tone. Still keep this tone here. Let's get a little bit more light. Boom, right in there. Give it the look of another petal right there. Right like that. That's what I like to do. That's what those independent strokes do. Now, if I want to put one right in there and I go, oh, I can't see it, take a little halftone in your brush and just take a little halftone stroke right there. And you'll separate those two lights and darks right there and create another petal. And you can come back with some light and shape it up a bit. Light and texture is what I really like. And this is where the long handle brush becomes exceedingly important. As you get more paint on the surface, the brush moves it really easy. So you want to step way back on your handle and you want to keep that nice soft edge, to front edge there to that. And that's where the long handle becomes really, really important, because as you step back, the tip of the brush stays softer. So here, we'll just do that. That's pretty. And I'll just lighten that up around there a little bit. Now, I wouldn't consider that completely done. I'd come back and do some more things. I want to put a little bit more of a violet, or that nice quinacridone violet right there into my rose. A nice pow. Look at me. Here's my beautiful rose right here like that. A little bit more punch. Maybe a violet. And one color I really like, and I don't always paint with globals. I go ahead and paint with the acrylics too, right? Combination with it. This is Darulite, especially if you're using halftones. You don't really need to use globals when you're doing halftones, because it's the tone stroke that really softens it. But I like the Darulite and right into something like that. This gives some power. Matter of fact, we'll paint some of these flowers with some Darulite. I love the power that Darulite gives the, especially in little touches, to the rose here. The coloring that it gives it, it's beautiful. Let's put a little Darulite and a little violet right into that backside right back here. See the punch that starts to add to that rose? A little color punch right in there. Some of that. I like that. And I don't mind that little bit of light right there. I really don't. Sometimes I go, okay, that was a mistake, but hey, that doesn't look so bad. Let's just put a couple more right in there. Open that rose up just a touch more. Gives it a little different look. Little halftone. Just little halftone strokes inside there are just creating that movement inside that rose. Maybe a bit of a shadow right here to bring that front petal up a little bit more. But yeah, that just creates some nice movement all there inside the rose. Let's let that one stand. Actually, let me just put a little more light right here. Boom, right up into the front of that. And heavier. And that, I got too close. See, I was too close on the handle of my brush, and I dug in and lifted off. So I just want to get back and lay this texture on this rose here, right into this area here. And just leave that for right now. We'll just leave that edge there. And let's put just a bit of that right there and just leave that. That's good. Now let's come back, soften back. Maybe we'll paint this one more of a yellow. So I'm going to take even some of my Darulite. I got to drop its intensity. Let's add a little green, a little red violet to it. And let's put just a bit of extender into that. Let's put a little bit of that yellow. Same yellow that you see in the front rose there. We'll drop some of that in there. We won't get too bright, but we want to get a little more yellow, and we don't want to get as light. So let's put the contrasting stroke on right now and see where we are. That's kind of pretty. Let's take a stroke of that here for a reaching petal. A petal that's coming out from the bowl. We call them the reaching petals. There. Of course, those of you that have been painting along in the Mastering Rose series, you know all of those terms. Let's take some of our quinacridone and our green here. Gray, so our green grays, our pine green grays down our quinacridone here. Let's apply that. We want our shadow here, not that violets and stuff, not quite as light or as, excuse me, not quite as bright as a tone is there. So adding more green will gray it and cause it to recede back there into the painting. We do want to keep a little bit of this light right out here like this, this yellow, in pretty good character, so that it comes up in front of this other kind of ghost one that's right back behind there. That is a little wet and running there too. So we want to keep it in pretty good dose of tone so that it comes up in front of that there. Let's get a little bit more yellow. Now let's do like we do in the first lesson, go a half tone lighter. So I watch what my tone is. That's really a kind of a full tone lighter, so I want to go softer, maybe right about in here. Don't go quite to that. Let's go right back into here, and let's see that lightness there. It's just a little bit lighter. As you see, now I can go right into this one and have it be just a little bit lighter and softer. This is how I build the first lesson of the book, is I go through and build and build and build the rows, slowly working lighter and smaller. Another little bit more white, work the color a little bit lighter, put on a little less area of it here so it doesn't get quite as much into it. A little bit lighter, a little bit brighter, maybe coming right across the front of it this time here. Here, we'll drop that in, drop a little mark of that in there. And a lot of times I will negative paint around it and clean up and reshape, which is one of the things I'll do on this one. But I want to get a little bit more of a violet in here, and I want to take that violet right back down into this rose a bit here, because I love the reaction of this quinacridone and the yellow. The quinacridone, and I first started painting a lot of quinacridone and yellow oxide to make peach color roses and stuff, and I've loved that. And so even though I painted that on there before, I'll paint it out a little bit and restate it and work it. That's what keeps your painting really, really casual and really pretty. The ability to rework it. You know, I get so many people that say, well, how do you get that casual? You really need to kind of play powerful strokes of playing and then seeing what that reaction is, you know, within your flowers. And you know, how much you leave is up to you. And I'm constantly trying, and, you know, all different kinds of looks. And, you know, and I'll put it out there on social media and say, okay, what do you guys think? You know, and, you know, it's because I don't always know. I'm not a person myself who particularly likes contrast. I like softer paintings. But a lot of my students like contrast, and they let me know that all the time. And so, you know, I tend to paint with more contrast than I personally like. And part of that is because I'm a selling artist, like a lot of you know. I'm a selling artist, and you know, I like to do that. So I like to make that sale. So I have to do that. I'm going to come down here, soften that just a bit here. So I got that little bit lighter there. I'm just going to come in and put a little bit of the softer tone here onto the edge and just kind of take that off just a bit here. So, and you can see you can just run through that with that little half tone in your brush. Here's that little half tone between the dark and the light, and just soften some of that movement right there like that. I have a feeling that my outside reaching petals there might be a bit too big. So I'm going to go back and revisit my cerulean in white right here for a second. And I'll put a little extender on there, starting to tighten up over here a little bit. But it's been an hour, so that's all right. And I'm just going to come in and just back paint back around. And I do this all the time in a painting. And I just walk right back up into that. Even if some of the yellow gets out into your background there, I don't worry about it. It's just good color. Let's just negative paint this back just a bit here. Like that. Push that light back in there. Matter of fact, we might want to just give a little bit more of a dose of blue right up against that. Get that nice through light blue going right in there like that. And I like this just a bit smaller, so that's one reason why I'm doing that. I got started to get that rose a little bit big. Let's take a little bit of that through light blue right into here and paint back in. Now, this is what a lot of today's contemporary painters do. And sometimes they'll specifically paint too big and come in and paint down an edge like that and leave that boy, there's nothing wrong with that. And when you're doing that, go over here and touch a little bit of that blue right up over in here. I do this on everything now. You know, a lot of my paintings, I'll go in and touch some colors and work some of those colors around. And, you know, it adds so much to it, you know, to a painting, to paint that casual and leave it like that. And that's the hardest thing to do, is to just leave it like that, you know. Now, let's go up here and let's just revisit a little bit of our green and burnt sienna and a little bit of our white again here. And let's just add just a few touches of that right in there. Leave some of those blues. But let's just revisit that a little bit. There's a little grayer color here. Back into some of our grays. And one of the things when you're painting like this, you know, when I was a decorative painter and all I did was decorative painting, I would, I think that leaf is a little big, so it's time to back paint it here. And I was so much into decorative painting, I'd always worry about the background color. How am I going to make that background color again and cover it up where no one sees it? Okay, well, now you're a casual painter. You never want to make that tone again. You want the next tone to be a little bit different so it has a little bit more interest to the painting when you get it done. The last thing you want to do is make exactly the same color and work with it again. You want it in the same kind of color family or tone, but you don't want to use the same. That's why I don't worry about getting exactly the same blue back in there again. You know, it doesn't need to be. It can be anything that's close. I'm going to put just a little bit more blue because I like that opened up just a touch more there. Maybe a bit lighter. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to get rid of some of that. Oh my goodness, I need the same color again. No, you don't. You don't want that. And I think in all the teaching that I do with my students and stuff, is that's the one thing that those of us that are coming from decorative painting, that's the one thing that I have to show them all the time, is that you don't want that. We spent 30 years trying to learn how to make that same coloring again, and now we don't want that same coloring again. We want something a little different. Let's take just a bit of that blue and touch it right very softly right into here, and that'll create harmony over on this side of that rose, and that'll cause that to, maybe we'll have just a little bit of that yellow and stuff right in here. We'll see, like, that's an edge of that. Maybe this is a little light edge, a little pink, a little grayed color right here. It's a little light edge of that rose right in there, sitting back there, back behind that. Very suggestive little rose back there, like that. I like that. You can really make it look like, what really makes it look like the rose is the center. So if I come in here and drop the center in and drop the lower shadow in, that's what really makes it look like a rose sitting back there. And this line might be a bit harsh, so I just disrupt that line, and then that center becomes softer and sits back a little further. And that's kind of nice. I would look at, as I'm working through the tones here, I'd look at maybe a nice yellow-green, maybe a little bit of our cerulean out here into that, because that is a pretty color into that. Pine green, yellow oxide, a little bit of our cerulean, a lighter one, but it's going to be a touch cooler. And let's just put in a little bit of our lighter or more of an opaque green right here to this side in our composition. That'll put this leaf, and if I get it a little warmer, so a little bit more yellow oxide and a touch more white into that, and I come in here and I do more of a stroke right here like this will jump this leaf right off the composition right into that area there. And I kind of like that jumped off right there. Now, I have to soften that. So let's go back to our halftone. Matter of fact, let's cool it just a bit of our gray, cooler, and let's drop a halftone down, and let's just run that basically right along the edge of that leaf there and push some of that back just a bit like that. And just let's leave that. It might be a little bit too edgy right now, but let's just leave that for right now and see how it goes, how it dries down. We can facilitate that or help that by putting a little bit of that over here to the other side, and which won't make it look quite so contrasty if I have a few touches of that coming over here to the other side. And let's build that just a touch more, a little bit more of a green underneath it. There. And so we'll give that edge. That's not really a great edge on that leaf there. But, you know, it's not something that I usually worry about yet. I'm just getting some of this stuff in. And let's just drop that light blue right against the edge of that just a touch and just get rid of some of that right there. But I want that color over there more than anything else. I like that pop that's there, and and if I'm going to leave that, I'm going to have it in a few other areas, like right down in there and stuff. But I do like some of that pop, and look at how much it's toned some of this down. We might want to add just a little softer, and if you get too much, you put a half tone in there. A little softer touch of some of this down here, and maybe an edge of a green here, like there's a green leaf and stuff there, or a little greenery coming out there. Now that's a little thick. So you can just take a little blue background, and this is exactly what a contemporary painter would do, is they just take a little blue background and paint right up next to it, because they're optical painters. They don't care what you see up close. They're caring what this painting looks like at 4 or 5 feet. That's what they're doing. So we'd look at that, and you know, what does it look like when you step back there? How is the optics affecting that right back there? So let's just carry a little bit of that right there, scrub that around a bit, and that just softens it out, softens those edges there, and gives you more of an optical painting there like that. That's really quite lovely. Good. That's going good. I maybe want to have sometimes I'll come in and say, I want to have a little bit more of a petal there. Maybe that's reaching over right in there like that. Let's get just a touch more white. These are some of the stuff I start to look as I start to develop a rose. If I want that softened, I could go down to a half tone. I can go right down here to my half tone grays and just take a tiny little stroke right there. And that helps soften it. And if I wanted it blended more, I'd go one more little tiny stroke, a half tone there. But I don't want that blended more. I think I want that just about like that. And I want to leave that light textured edges right there that help that light source on that rose there. That's kind of pretty. Now, let's come over. Let's quit playing around with that and get back over here to this one. We have to decide white. Yeah, maybe white. Maybe a white variation. Let's gray it down. And so we're not anywhere near where we were. That's where we were. We want to come down here. And let's put on this contrasting stroke right up here by the top of the petals here, which you see in the book. And then see how that advances that rose. We could go a little bit more. Let's be careful though. Let's go a half tone lighter, and let's take that contrasting stroke here. And I think we're still safe. Look at it through the monitor there. Yeah, it's going back behind that one still. So that's okay. Right out through here, we'll put on some of the petals, the reaching petals coming towards our light source, coming back here, diminishing down here like that. Let's go just a touch, another half tone lighter, like we do in the first lesson. Half tone lighter. Push that right on the edges here that are coming to that rose, so I get a nice bridge to that rose. Now let's head to our shadow. Let's go back. This is where we were. Let's get back here. Let's go a half tone darker, cooler, maybe even a full tone here, and strike across. Now many times in the book you'll see me strike across like that, and I do that to break the power of that petal coming out. So now I've got that tone, and I've got that tone into the front of the petal. I'll come right here with a half tone between the two, and maybe just hit a little stroke out like that, and that softens that whole edge there and gives me my movement back. Let's go reach back up here and soften that tone right in there. Okay, let's reach a little darker back here and push just a little more dark right out to there, and we'll soften that with a little half tone. Sometimes that half tone is, just one stroke is all you need. Take a look, step back. I want to lighten this up just a bit more here. Now, one thing you have to remember this is when you're painting in halftones like this. When they start to dry, everything will dry darker, and that's what's you're really gonna notice that in the acrylics here like this when you're darkening when the tones. So sometimes it's better to paint a tone maybe a little bit lighter than what you think, because it's gonna dry darker. It's gonna dry almost a full tone darker. It's just that way, a full value darker. So I like that. Sometimes I get that real skippy, that casual painting to it, And I just like that. Maybe soften that with a little half tone right there. Like that. That's kind of pretty. Maybe lift off a little half tone from the shadow here. Like that. And that's the kind of way I leave a rose sometimes, you know, painting in that soft tone. So we're up at our light tone. Let's drop down here a little cooler. So I know I can sneak this in a little cooler on this side of the rose here. Let's go down. Let's keep going down in tone, a little cooler, a little softer right out over here. So we're painting the cooler side of the rose now down over here, a little shadow side of the rose here. Okay, let's get some of our quinacridone here. Get that just a little grayer. Get some of our nice quinacridone in green here, a little grayer, cooler color. Matter of fact, let's take a contrasting stroke in there right now, even though it's going to be too dark. Let's go ahead, because I'll show you. I'll go ahead and contrast, and I know that that's too dark for really what I want to have in that rose. And so what I do is I'll put that on, knowing that, and then I'll start to lighten it back up. So I'll start to head back through that and start looking at the tone to see where it is I like that. And heading to a little yellow, just a little bit warmer here. But I don't completely get rid of that tone. I'm painting out the edges of it here to soften it out. So you can see I can look at that shadow tone, how it all appears on this side of that rose. Sometimes I leave it like that just for nice soft. Sometimes I'll just blend this or take that out. Or let's head to the other side to this real cool green, which I'll do many times, especially if I'm doing lost edges on something here. I'll just take that green right into that edge there like that and leave that. And a lot of people say, how do you paint transparent edges? This is how. I'll do something like this and then step out with just a half tone lighter to the edge, and that'll start to make it look like it's got transparency to that edge of that petal that's over there. Now, I don't want to make it that perfect round there either. I don't want to get into that. And we can take some of our dark color and negative paint some of this out here so that we can. And I'll let sometimes like this, and when that happens, I'll let that just get blurry like that and maybe set like another layer of a petal underneath there. And I'll let that sit. I mean, I used to worry about that stuff, and now people go, wow, how do you get that in there? And it's just like, I kind of made a mistake, and I just fixed it, and I thought, well, okay, that looks okay. That's really where you want to go as an artist, isn't it? Where you're going to try to fix something, and you have to be able to say, wow, that looks okay. Don't go in with what your first impression is. Don't go in with like you set an impression, I got to go in there and fix this, okay? Because at some point in time, after one or two little strokes, it may look great, and that's when you got to say, stop. I got to stop painting. And I can ruin the look by creating it, by doing, too much to it. And so that's where you got to learn how to just stop. Let what happens, and then continue on. And that's what I tell all my students now. It's just like, I mean, it may, in your part of correcting, you may say, oh, I got to paint that out. But hey, after you start to paint it out, it may look, oh, wow, that's not so bad. And be ready to accept that. Be ready to accept that, hey, that's not so bad, and get out of the rose, because the more you paint it, the stiffer it's going to become. So we want to do that. So here I'm going to come in and put just a little bit of my movement here into the center, real soft here. Maybe a little bit more towards my quinacridone right down in here. A little quinacridone and some of that green. Maybe I want to get that. I haven't even used the higher contrast yet of the red-violet. I love a little bit of that red, that quinacridone out there. Just real spotty, beautiful, intense, spotty color out there. And just use the corner of your brush with like a little half-tone light here. Just a half a tone lighter. And just kind of move that through just to create. It's like I say so many times I used to, as a decorative painter, always paint petals. Now I paint movement more than I paint petals. And then the viewer will see the petals, So just paint movement, because the viewer will see the petals. And I'll check that. That's looking pretty good. That's still coming up as the main rose there, so that works pretty good. Let's get just a little bit more of our warmth and light, just a touch. I'm kind of playing with fire here, but I know it's going to dry down. So, and this other front of this other rose is dried down a little bit already. So, you know, I just don't want to go, let's half tone that back down. So here's where I was, and I'm going to go right down here. You can see the tone difference. You can see the tone difference on your rose. I can go one more little bit lighter right between those two. And yep, and you can see that gives a nice little edge to that part of the rose there, like that. That's kind of nice. Now, I do like to have some of the center spin a bit, so I can just come back with a little bit of my dark and add just a touch of that spin right there like that, and that gives a nice look. That's a nice rose. And I don't think I'll do too much. Maybe a darker grade, white, suggestive color, like there's a real, and I started doing these and I really like it. It suggests that there's a petal down here that is way of this rose that is way low, and you're seeing just a little bit of that color. You don't have to paint a beautiful petal down there. You just got to suggest a little color. And then let's get rid of that, some of the edges of that with a little green. But it's down there. See, it's a suggestion that, wow, there is something down there in that. There might be a petal down there or a little something going on down there, a little movement here. That's maybe a little bigger rose than what you think, and you're just seeing part of it. And that's what makes it pretty. You don't need to, you know, hiding some edges of the roses and stuff makes them really pretty. Like maybe that's a bigger rose there, and you're only seeing a little bit of it. You're not seeing all of it, you know. And so let's put some of that in there, and let's drop that lighter petal right back up on top, which is very important. So we'll drop that up right there, making sure those come just almost conformal where they touch each other. Let's go down. Okay, so here's our white, which is right up by our front rose. Let's keep that in mind as we come right down here. We'll make a contrasting stroke for our next one. That'll be a darker tone, maybe a value or two, maybe an 8 instead of a 9 right down here. And let's make a contrasting stroke right here. Let's also shift this over to a little bit of yellow here. So let's shift that tone over yellow here. Like that. Let's make that yellow rose back in a little bit more yellow and white into this one. I'm going to take a bit of that yellow right into this rose here as well. That's our big queen. The queen should be happy with all of her little subjects there, carrying a lot of those colors that you see, you know, here. So we could add a touch of some of that into some of this one as well. Just a bit of that just touching in there. Just adds that harmony of color through. There we go. That's pretty nice. And let's go work this. Now I got my shadow, I got my light, and here let's take a little yellow oxide right down here, a little darker. Take a little of our quinacridone. I love that. Darkens this down. So that's my light. My shadow's quite a bit darker. So this one will probably be, let's put just a little bit of darker light into that. Probably be a pretty good half tone. See, right between that dark that's there and that bold that's there. I'm going to push that color around a bit here. Right down into here and let that just push around and set up some of the coloring and the shape of that particular rose. Maybe inside here just a bit of that movement there. Okay, now to you know, work that. That's where we were. This is where this one is. Let's go with a little bit of yellow and a little yellow oxide here. We've got to cool this down just a bit. So I want to be just a little bit lighter. Here's where I was. Here I was. There's the first one here. Somewhere right in between, right in here, and build the front of that bowl up a little bit more, maybe around, so you can see the difference in the tone here. You can see I'm building it up a little bit more. So you see that difference right here. Here was the front. Here's the bottom. Here's now the middle. It's right in between those here. And we'll build just a bit. I want to head more towards this bottom tone, more yellow oxide, a little bit of my quinacridone, a little burnt sienna in that too would be pretty because we put that into those leaves. Let's get that down here. Wipe that off the brush. I always clean my brush. Sometimes I get too much paint. Wipe it with a paper towel. Let's come right back in here and work that tone. That's a pretty tone in there with that one. It's going to work up well against that white flower there. And real pretty tone. Let's get some of that right down here like that. Let's take some of that right in here. Toss a little bit of that in there as well because we like to carry color. That's a pretty tone. Love that peachy color there that comes from that quinacridone and yellow oxide. It's just a real pretty tone. Here, just warm that side of that rose right there just a bit. That's pretty. Maybe take just a touch of that lighter right on the edge of that. So let's do that. Let's take some of our lighter color right in here. Let's come in a little bit lighter on that here. And I've got to decide now just how much light I'm going to bring into that tone. I like that kind of peachy color. I'm going to leave that. Let's pop it with just a little bit of diarylite. So yellow oxide, some quinacridone, a little bit of our diarylite in there just to pop that up. Probably going to need just a touch more diarylite and some more white. And we're going to watch this up against that one. See, I'm still not close yet to that one. So that's our front edge of that petal. So this will probably take me there. Pretty darn close to taking me there like that with that one here. And we'll soften that edge there. Let's go back down towards our shadow. Half tone down towards our shadow. Here. Wipe our brush. Take another strike of it. Sometimes I'll come in and I change the actual character of the tone, especially if I'm heading to a shadow, and I'll cool it here a little bit more pink, and that makes it a pretty tone like that. See, a little bit more pink as I'm cooling it towards the shadow, and I'll head just the opposite way, a little bit more towards the yellow right up here if I'm heading towards the warmth or the sun of it here. So let's take a look here. This right up against the edge of that white. That's pretty. That's nice. So you see, I build a lot of times. Sometimes I build them as stroke roses. Sometimes I build them like this as just toned roses. Let's get a bit of our cooler tone right in here to say that's where the bowl of our rose is. We never want to really lose the bowl of the rose. Let's get that nice cool. And down here we might even want to add a little tiny bit of that red violet just to really darken that tone down a bit. I want to gray that just a touch here. So a little bit of green goes into that just to gray it. A little bit of our, you could also use diarylite. That would gray it too because it's almost a complement. Here, let's get some of that right down in here, right down in this edge. But we get a bit of that nice sparky red-yellow contrast there, which is pretty. And let's lighten this edge here. That's pretty. Nice turned down rose here. Use just the edge of your brush. Just work those tones right in there together. I like to just play those colors there. Let's go a little bit lighter and brighter right there and around. That sets the edge. We'll darken down a half tone so we can create the movement inside the flower there, like that. Movement inside that flower. Let's go back out. That's the front of that one flower. This was the, let's change the yellow up a bit. Let's add just a touch of Hansa to that brighter stuff here. Let's get some of that right into here. We're going to bring these two real close together since they are formal and they're coming close together there. I'm just going to clean my paper towel here. Now I can soften that with a halftone. Here's where I was. Here's where that is right down here. So I'll come right in between those two right there and just soften that just a bit. See that stroke right there? Just softens it just a bit. Let's take a bit of that halftone and drop it onto that one. And then so I was there, so I drop down here more towards my pinky and I'll soften that edge there of that one down here. Let's just put a little edge onto these right there like that. So you see that nice little edge there. That's pretty nice. Let's go up light just a bit because I'm coming up to this lighter side. So we'll push just a little light. Go light just a bit because I'm right up here by the front. Let's push that light in there, so the light side of that. There. There's a light side of that rose. Let's drop down half tone towards our shadow. And lift that right off there like that so we can preserve that bowl shadow just a touch there. That's kind of pretty. Let's go, let's come back over here. We have a little bit of that yellow in our brush. Let's go right back to that white. Let's reset the white of this petal right here. Nice thick white right up on top of the edge of that rose there. That's nice. And make sure that we get that little bit of a half tone right here so it softens in just a touch here. Like I said, I revisit these guys several times during the painting here to make sure that I get the right look to them here. And so I like revisiting these front roses, especially the center of interest rose, several times during the painting here. And that's just a little, that makes that petal look a little long, so I'm just going to cut that shadow out down here a bit more. There, like that. That's pretty. Gives a little different look to that rose there. There we go. Let's put a half tone right here. Right between that shadow and that light. That softens that just a bit. And right out here. Boom. That pulls that light in. Maybe push right up here like this. Get that nice edge. Sometimes I'll put just a little chisel of that tone right in like that. It makes it look like another little petal there. Sometimes it gives more movement interest into it. Here, we'll go back to half-tone shadow. Just soften that a bit. Okay, so I got that worked back out again. Sometimes if I feel like that's too much the same, I'll go ahead and pull back out. But overall, I think that looks okay. Let's go back to our light. That's where we were, so I'm a little bit darker, but pretty light, but a little bit darker. And let's set in a light. And let's set in a light here up onto this petal. And we'll soften that with a bit of a half tone lifting right up to it. And we'll give just a little opening up of an edge of a rose there. Maybe a chisel edge of a petal there coming that way. Let's go back to a cooler kind of a half tone here. Maybe just pull down just a bit. Just soften that. A little bit of the light. Pull down. So I get a little different look to that rose there. And let's go back a bit more light right here. Push in that nice light little edge that will contrast that center. I like that contrasting edge that, you know, of the rose up against that center. That's just one of the things I like to do. Sometimes I do it a little too much, but I like to do that. I'm going to soften that shadow just a touch with some movement. That's a little too much, so I go back with my red violet and a little of that quinacridone right in there. Push that in. And that's nice and soft there. I know I could have a bit more of my light tip to those petals, so I'll pick that light tone up right on the edge, and I'll look for a stroke or a strike right to what we call a strike. Not a stroke, a strike of it. Let's go a little bit lighter, a little more dialite, a little more power to it right here. A little more texture to it. Step back on the brush, flatten the brush out. That keeps the tip of it very soft and allows you to just lay the tone right on there. Yeah, I like that, so I'm going to go one more, a little bit lighter right here. And let's just lay an edge of that lighter tone right in there. As another little petal, maybe a bit of cool. But that works there. That works. Just little touches of that. And like the other, I'm going to rinse that out for a second because I'm going to go to a blue and I don't want it to get real green. I can take my nice light cerulean blue sky color that I had here too, That's the other thing that looks beautiful on some of these roses, is just a little accent of that color sometimes on the sides of these petals and stuff, just as an accent. If you get too much, you can just run some yellow through there and just push that, what do you call it, it sinks that color into the rose a bit there. So that's kind of nice. That's kind of a pretty with that. The rose is just a bit stiff feeling right in there, so I might take some of my green and my red and push those together there like that and incorporate those petals right in there. See how that softens out that whole edge of that rose, and maybe not put that petal in quite so perfectly here. Just let that sit out like that and just kind of die down there, and that I think will work a lot better in the overall painting here. So let's continue on here. Let's take a little bit of our yellows, some of our soft whites. Let's gray this up. Let's get some green over here. Let's gray this up. Real soft, light color. Here we were going to maybe put another rose right in there. And we'll paint just a suggestion of it. We need this to get down cooler here. And so some quinacridone, some green here. Quinacridone and green here. Let's get this down. And I shouldn't push like that. That's not halftone. Sometimes you just gotta. We'll push that around. Maybe there's a little bit of this color coming up into this one here. I'm going to be very, very casual with my coloring here and my positioning of these. Little quinacridone, a little red violet, a little bit of green. Not too much color. Let's just set an idea of the edge of a bud or something like that. A bud is more of an oval shape, but here, so we can do more of an oval shape here, like maybe this is going to be a bud, rose bud in there. Let's get, I love that quinacridone. Let's, get a strike or so of that in there. Maybe that's a red or color. And see that red up against this edge of the rose there. It's really quite pretty into the painting. And we don't need that much over here to say, hey, there's a rose. You don't need that much because you already have the main roses here already shaped as roses. So if I do anything that's circular or oval or anything out here like this, the viewer's going to see it as a rose. And so the main thing that you want to do is just don't paint a rose perfect. And a lot of people always say to me, it's the most asked question, how do you paint casual? Well, it's something that I'm learning to do every day still. And I'm getting better at it when I stop painting, when I don't worry about painting something so perfect. And I let the viewer's eyes, just like what Monet says, I let the viewer's eye paint it, and I like it a lot better then as well. So you don't need to get out there and paint something really perfect. You just need the color movements and stuff. Colors more than anything else. It's the colors more than anything else there. So that looks pretty good in there. And let's just add a little, maybe this is one right down in there too. Just a little bit more of that movement down in there. And let's get a bit of our cooler greens up in there. Push that back. Maybe there's a leaf that's pushing that rose, that petal, or that edge of that one back just a bit more. Don't want to get that perfect there though. Don't want that edge too perfect there. So I'm always watching the edges of stuff too. And do I need a halftone or something to soften an edge or push it back, or where am I going with that? Maybe I want to make this a little bit more of a green. Let's get a little yellow oxide into that and push a green leaf coming out right here like that. That pushes back those two roses back up underneath to another area, another level. It pushes them back one more time. Let's push, let me move those out of the way. Let's go push our pine green and red violet. That's one of our darkest colors we can make onto the palette here. Of course, adding a tiny bit of our phthalo blue would do it too. That's a real super dark, cool color, almost a black. And we can use that right over here into any of our coolest areas here to generate a lot of contrast on one side of the flower here. And I'll use it sometimes in a negative painting situation to really get spots of dark into a painting. And let's go up a half tone. So that was there. Let's go up into here just a bit. Not quite as dark. Let's go a little bit more yellow into that. And set this back edge a little negative painting, and I like that. I like that little green leaf still coming out of there. But I might spark that with another little green. And, that's one of the things I do is, as I'm painting this with you here, I'm trying some things. See if it works. If that doesn't work, I'll just reset it and do something else. I just see if it works. It's just, I like this dark. I don't like it quite as dark as I'm coming up here to the light. But some of that there, it just pops that flower out. Let's lighten that just a bit. One little area there. So it's not quite so outlined. There, let that just come like that. That's pretty. That's a pretty color. We might want to push a little bit of that. A little bit more green and yellow. Gets it a little bit more, just a touch more of the green. Not perfect. Let's get a little bit of this pink into that. Cool that just a touch. And see what a little half-tone lighter green would do on the edge of that leaf there. So it's still heading into shadow, but it's, a little touch lighter than that one here. Let's get just a touch lighter here. Walking up the tones as I'm stroking this on, walking up to see the half tones there. That's not too bad. Here, just take some of that out just a touch. So you can go back and forth, and you'll notice that in different artists will do different things. Some will touch that 4, 5, 6, 7 times, slightly different tones each time, and create a completely different look, to the painting. So there's a lot of different ways in which you can do it, but they're fun. They're fun half tones like this. Let's just pull that out there like that. I like that. Let's do some very simple little rosebuds out here. Kind of pinky, yellow, peachy kind of rosebuds out here. Soft little tone coming from the, let's put that on first, and let's just gray that just a touch back here. Just make that a touch grayer by adding some green, about the same value. See how it grays it? See? Add some of this yellow green. That's about the same value. And it will gray it there. Let's push that in. Let's put a little darker, a little quinacridone here. And put that oval shape on that helps us determine that rosebud kind of look to it. There we go. And I'll set that out. Let's yellow that up just slightly. Little white, little yellow. Nice medium color of the composition. So that'll just give it the idea of a rosebud. Maybe a little bit more light. Smaller little petal kind of there. You can push a little half-tone shadow around to take some of that out, but we just want to put on a simple little shape there for the oval shape for the rosebud here. Oval shape here, up and around. And let's put some of that over here onto this one. Here, that one's just a simple little bud, just maybe opening up a bit here. Like that. Here, maybe a bit of it. A few petals starting to open up just a bit. Not too much light to it. There. I'm going to take some of that pink and visit that right over here as well, that pinky yellow. That just puts that tone over there. Travels it across, and I think that looks pretty good there. Now, sometimes I paint these things very, very specific, and sometimes I paint these things really, really soft. So, You know, it's they're different, and you know, here I'm painting them really casual because it seems like that's the, you know, of all the things I paint, you know, everyone is just always telling me I want to paint more casual. So it's good to see how you paint something more casual. Follow your light, come down. Now I put that light tone on. Let's go down and let's address that into the bowl. Let's push it down into the bowl with a little half tone, slightly darker grayer. So I make my kind of color there, gray it with some of the green and stuff there. And let's just drop that in. A little half tone there so that softens that out. That might be a bit light, so I just touch it a couple of times there. You know, here I have something else, like it's another color back there, and it could be, I could just take a little soft color, whisper it back there, like maybe there's another little something right back there, softer. And boy, you know, take some of your blue and stuff from your sky and push it back into that too and soften that out and around. And let's clean that out of the brush here for a second. Let's go grab a little bit of our cerulean and some white here. Let's push that into the brush and really set that back. And this is where one of the things I like to do into the painting is work these colors. Now, you see, a lot of people will go, I'm not the same color. Well, again, you don't want to be. These tones will dry down. These tones will incorporate with each other and blend and so you just have to come close, and that's what you want. You know, like I want to give like the idea there's another little rosebud back there, and a really good optical painter might come in here with like a bright blue through light right in here, and say, okay, there's a bright blue through light right through the composition right there that is, you know, and this other softer rose and everything like that that's covering up right up against the edge of that. And that's a different look. That's today's look. And, you know, and it's a beautiful look. And, of course, these edges right here are a little harsh, so we'll soften it out. But that's what's popular today in so many paintings. So we'll just soften out the edges here. So you see, like, there'll be a through light coming right through the composition. And some of your very, very popular painters, like today, like Richard Smith, who gets, you know, thousands of dollars a painting, very, very popular. That's one of the things that he does, is he comes back in and sets some more light back through the painting like that. And it really is a great look when you start doing that. Now, some of this will dry down. We know that light colors are going to dry down, and so, but they'll come back in and set some more through light through. You know, sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't. I have time on this DVD. I can do it here, so I'll go do a little bit of it there to show you that. And sometimes we might leave a little bit more of an edge, and sometimes we might take that edge out, or like that green one there, we'll take that edge out. And you know, there's a lot of difference to it. We'll change the blue over here a little bit and set my light up here, maybe just a touch lighter. Set my light up here a little better and work that through. But understanding how this light is going through just really creates a lot of more volume to your painting, you know, pushing light through your painting like that. And I started to do this in some other, you know, casual paintings, casual ones in other books. I started to do some of this through light like this, and very, very popular. They sell very, very well. My students love it, and you know, that's basically how I do it. I push the through light through, and then, you know, I'll restate some of the edges and stuff of that rose onto that side. I'll find that edge, gray it down just a bit here. And generally it's cooler and grayer than what the through light is. So that just helps that through light come through that edge of that rose a lot better here. But, you know, for, you know, a couple hour painting, working with it like this, working through these tones, in a couple hours you can make a really quite a beautiful little tonal painting here, half-tone painting with the roses like this. It's just a couple hours, and I used to take all day paint something half this size. I'd take all day to paint it perfect or something like that, and now today I can paint something like this. When I start thinking about it into the tones, that's the big secret. I got to think about it into the tones and work with the colors, and it works so much better. I'm going to take just a bit of my greens out here and loosen up my composition just a bit here. Move some of my colors out a bit more. I put that trinity of leaves out here and stuff, and for the most part I like it. It's a little structured for me, sitting out on this side over here, a little big. Over here I might take some of it down, I'll show you that, but I might come out here and push a little more casual nature of the greens moving out through the painting like that. Matter of fact, I think I will. At any time, you can take that sky. Just take that down here. And let's just take down. And this is how you do it. And this is one of the reasons why I love this. I love halftone painting. I love tone painting. I love doing it this way. Because in the tone painting, when I come back to correct something or paint something down or something like that, and maybe soften that edge there just a bit like that, take that down. Not quite so powerful there. And not quite so perfect. Just destroy that edge just a bit there like that. I don't have to have perfect color. I don't have to have perfect tone. I can just drag some of that blue over the back edge of this rose here and set that back and soften it out, and maybe put just a bit of green in there as well, and that works good. And let's take just a bit of my violet into here. Set that one back up in there. I'm going to not clean my brush, just rinse it with put a bit of extender into it to thin that out just a bit and let it just slide over that so I get a little transparency, breaking up the tone just a bit. That looks a lot better. And see, doing that and working into the edges like this and watching just the edges, take that back down just a bit here. And I like that so much more into the painting. It's so much better. Now, I've got this where that leaf, this looks like it droops down, and I don't like that. So, what it is the shadow of that green. And so I'll just take a little bit of our shadowy color here. I'm going to raise the shadow up a little higher into the leaf here, like that. So I divide that leaf in half a bit more. Let this come out a bit more like that here, so that comes out a little straighter there. But see, when you're working with these halftones, now I'll just take a halftone lighter, push that right in there like that. Let's head to a little bit darker, and just push a tone just a little darker right there, and that's pretty nice, and gets that nice movement there. I can push any kind of green shadowing tones, any kind of green or reddish shadowing tones anywhere around some areas there. If I got, like, that's just a touch, I liked it, but it was just a touch too red into that. So I'll just take a little green over that. Let's get a little lighter green, just a touch lighter gray or green. A little bit lighter yet. Sometimes it takes you a bit to find that. Let's put a little yellow in it too, just for giggles. There we go. Take some of that down. That's how I work it. I might leave a little bit of that tone left there, and then I might take some of it completely out. So, and that's the beautiful thing about, getting these multiple tones here. Let's take a nice soft white here. Maybe push in a little more of the back edge of this rose here. That might be kind of pretty to let some of that sit, or the viewer see, maybe that's just transparent petals there. Here like that, coming in on that rose. That's kind of pretty. I don't want to get it too big there though, so let's take a little cool, incorporate a little bit of cool color into some of that. That's kind of nice. That might appear a little big right back there. And that's another area that you can come in and take a bit of blue, light blue, sky blue here. Just negative paint that right back up like that. Take that back out just like that. Yeah, that's pretty. And maybe give them a little bit lighter edge down a little lower here. There we go. Something like that. Go back towards our original grays right up here. And hit a few of those, just moving right around this center of this rose. Touch of those moving around in there. And look overall, you know, at some of your painting here and see. Now, you start to decide, now, you know, do you want to see any more edges of the rose? Do I want to see a little softer yellow back here, edge of this rose? Do I want to see it a little bit more? I look for the tone, maybe a half tone lighter here. Maybe I want to see just a touch more of that tone, that edge of that rose there. I want this rose to round up just a bit more, so maybe I'll take a little bit more of a half tone here and push that light around the edge of that rose a little bit more. That gives more power to the roundness of this rose rather than those lines, these petals moving it out here. That sets that a bit more, maybe a bit more of an edge here. Petal coming around. Let's go a half tone darker. Soften that in. A little bit of pink got in there and that looks pretty. There, just an edge of that. That's kind of pretty. Let's put a little bit of that pinky edge right here too. Maybe a bit lighter to slide through that pink that's right there, right up towards that light. Step back on your brush so it stays soft. Just put a little touch or two of that right there. Going around, that's kind of pretty. There. There we go. That's looking pretty good, and you have to now, you know, look also here, like I think onto this one. Overall, I like everything here. I might want to restate just a little bit of my light. Sometimes those lights you have to state a couple of times, and I like what I call little marks. These little marks, you know, this kind of showing up every once in a while. I love those in a painting too. I look for those. I let some of those happen. If I don't, I just kind of skip my brush around a little bit, especially towards my center of interest. I like to see those into the painting here. I see I wanted to develop this little rosebud, just another little stroke or so, and restate that shadow here onto that side, just to push that back a bit and keep that very casual. Let's also here, one of the things is I'm going to lift this right up here like this, and I want to go up just a bit higher here. So I have this setting here. I want to go off the edge here, and I want to take some of my green. Let's take a little cooler quinacridone, a little green. You know, I start to think also right about now, you know, my grays, green grays here, about the overall form of the painting here. I love that, you know, I hit a little burnt sienna and a little bit of that yellows and stuff like that earlier. I love those colors. Maybe a little bit of our, you know, the quinacridone violet to cool that. Those are all pretty tones. But let's just look form-wise here. Let's put in a little bit more of our shadow, like pulling down. This is a very contemporary look that I like to do. That might be a bit dark, so let's first go in a half tone lighter here. So here's where I was. Let's go a little bit lighter grayer here and look at the difference of that pulling down. And that, you know, it helps pull the composition, weigh the composition down here like this. And again, it's a contemporary look. I like it, and a lot of my customers like it. And so I'll pull down. Sometimes I use my paper towel to make that a little softer like that, pulling down and keeping it more of a transparent, almost a transparent look to it. You know, I don't want to disturb everything I had there before because I like some of that, but I like the pull down of it. It's different from the sideways here, different little action to the floral here. And So that adds some of that. But then you can go back, if you want a little clarity to some of those shadows and shadow leaves, you can come back and add a little more color into some of those, even more greens or more greens. And your darkest is your red violet. That's your darkest, coolest. But take it a half tone at a time. Don't, that's the thing. Don't jump in there super contrast. Just start darkening it down a little bit more and a little bit more, and seeing if that is what you like in that particular tone here, and seeing if that works. And so don't go too aggressive too fast. Let's lighten that edge. I really want to jump some more texture off of this one here, so that really comes forward there. Now see, I like it. It's a little smooth for the painting because I wanted this to be a little more structured, a little bit more textured into the painting here. So let's do this here. That's it. That's really quite a bit. And let's just soften that with just a little greener half tone. No, that's not quite light enough. There we go. That's better. And I'll play those tones, kind of in the shapes of the leaf and stuff. I don't always have to, hit the leaf exact. Now, if I take too much, I'll take a half tone darker and soften that back out a bit there. But that, I'll build my leaves. I'll play my leaves like that, watching some of this stuff and seeing the reaction on that leaf, seeing some of these colors. I like to put in some marks of greens and stuff, into the painting there. And you just put those marks and stems, even through your through light right there. That's great. Put some color, put some marks and stuff that just loosens everything up for your whole painting here. And yeah, that's looking pretty nice. It's overall very, very soft painting as far as the the edges and stuff. And in that monitor, that looks pretty good. You step back for a little bit. Up close, you go, wow, that's quite a bit. Could you have more? Yeah, absolutely. Because there's other colors, those of you that really like contrast, I can start really stepping it up now too. Like let's go right into our Hansa, which is our lightest, brightest, and a little bit of white. Now this is kind of dangerous. We were into our lower rows there. We were about a value 8 to 9 here. So you want to keep that tone right about there, but you'll be looking at a brighter color now. So if I come in here like that, so you see I get a brighter yellow in there like that. And do I want to leave that bright of a tone in there on the front of that rose like that? And so I'll take that bright tone. Let's just take a little yellow oxide right here with that. Let's just drop a little yellow oxide. You could see the toning down, dropping down just a little bit. Maybe I want to leave the front of that rose. Let's put the half tone to the bottom of this bowl here. That'll help us bring out the bowl. So you see, and what I'm doing here like that is I'm bringing the whole edge of that rose forward. Do you do that? That's bringing more contrast. That's up to you. I'm just going to show you some ways here. You can cool that slightly. Now, why would you cool it? Well, you're going to head into the shadow. So if I really want to make the bull shadow drop in, I cool that. See how that drops that in? Not only to the bull shadow, but to the reaching petals. That little bit of cool pushes those shadows together there a little closer and gives you a little different look. So, grabbing some of that yellow oxide, some of that quinacridone together, those are beautiful colors together. Those can grab some nice shadowings over here, nice color movements there to the edges of your roses here. So you have this nice high contrast yellow that you can use up here especially up onto the light, the light strike side of this rose right up in here. Boom, there's this nice contrast light yellow, bright yellow, really boom. And you look up at close like at that monitor, you go, whoa. And you look at it back there and you go, oh, wow, that's pretty. So, you have to kind of judge it by stepping back. Drop this tone down. Cool it down just a little bit, just a little half tone cooler right here like this. And use that to help set in that tone little strokes of that tone right in there, right as it's going into the bowl of the rose. And that, so here now I've taken this rose and I've increased its contrast overall within the painting here. And that's some of the stuff I want to show you. Which is correct. All of us like different things. So, someone will like, oh, I like the softer one before. That's okay. Someone would like more of the contrast with it. That's okay. It's all correct. And as a professional painter, like I do, I paint it all. I tend to paint it all because I have different customers who like different things, and I want to get the greatest amount of customers, greatest amount of sales, greatest amount of market appeal, which means I got to paint it all, And if you're painting for yourself, then that's one thing. But, there's one thing to do too is, there's a couple ways to look at it. Paint for yourself, and that's fine. I have students that paint for themselves. I had my house full of paintings that all looked the same because I painted everything for like 4 or 5 years with raw umber. So everything in my house looked the same. I love my house now that you go there and you go, wow, look at that, and look at that, and look at that. All the different tones and all the different looks. And everyone that walks into my house loves it because of all the different looks. They don't like every single painting. Of course they don't. But they like they like the variety of the looks. And so, sometimes when you're an artist and painting, we paint something for the pure joy of the creation and stuff, and for other people to like it. And that means you're going to have to paint some things you don't like sometimes. Let's put that on. Let's cool this down just a bit, a little softer halftone, and just drag right through that. So we put the edge of that little petal on there. So now you see we're building the edge of that little rose right there up onto its edge. And it gives a little bit of difference there for that particular rose. We can go a little bit back up towards our light, just a touch more. Bring those petals. Bring a little texture into that. Bring this up to almost that same level as that white one right there. Do you want to do that? That's up to you. Put a nice big light petal there. That's really bringing it into the front. So, this is some of the last critical stuff that I start to look at is how much contrast am I going to bring all the way through my composition, and do I want to have some of that not quite that bright. Let's put some yellow oxide with that. Not quite that much. Let's go back down just a touch, right about in there. And have a bit of that up here into this one. Just touches of it here. It will make it appear rounder and more going on in it here. And, just a little bit lighter here. And edges just a little bit more. That brings that rose just a touch more round, a touch more towards you a bit, just because I lightened up the let's go a half tone darker and cool that edge down towards the bowl here. Let's go a little bit more quinacridone, maybe a touch of yellow oxide now here, darker and cooler as I head right into that bowl there. That's pretty good. And if you have your finger, you hit it with the finger, and that's one thing I'm going to gray this down just a bit more here over to this side. If you're having the tendency that you want to touch it with your finger or blend it, that means your tone is off just a bit. So you want to get your tone a little closer. Look at where your tone, where's the difference on your tone? What is it that's making you feel that way? And adjust your tone. Let's put a little edge petal right there. Right like that. So that little rose comes right at you there. Just put a little bit more light right on the edge of that petal. So it comes at us just a bit right there. There we go. And maybe transition right up here, a little bit of that light right to this one here, because that is the light side right there. Let's transition that one right there. And so this is some of the stuff I start to really look at through the composition to get more interest into my paintings. Okay, so now I got that yellow over there. You might want to take that yellow and just travel it a little bit through your painting here and there. Just it never hurts to travel that yellow a touch through the painting there. And You know, it never hurts to restate some of this stuff. Let's get some of our real light whites. Just restate that nice thick color one more time there. That's pretty nice. Let's get this light edge right here. That's that beautiful rose petal there. Coming back here like that. So now we got a beautiful, and see, I'm just working, as I'm restating this, I'm working each one of these a half tone up lighter. Not a, you know, a half tone up lighter, so I don't have to worry about softening tones and stuff like that. So I'm just grabbing a half tone lighter each time. A little bit more white, a little light. If you jump it too much, then you just go grab another. So that's like the edge that's a little too much. So I'll grab that light and we'll go over here. We'll gray it. Let's cool it just a bit too. We'll cool it down, a little half-tone cooler, and just push that edge right there. There we go. That pushes that edge. Nice, and maybe hit just the edge of that one there. Right here. Boom. Right like that. Push that through. That's nice. Yeah, and you know, it's like I could open this up just a touch more, make that center of this rose a bit bigger here. So we could just leave that one there and just open this one up with a little bit more pink here. That gives you a little more difference here to the painting. Here, maybe just the edge of that light. Like I say, there's a lot to play with, and especially when you're painting with the halftones there, there's a lot that you can play with and do. And I'm just painting, I'm working right around 8, 9, 10, and little, you know, 8.5 and 9.5 here. Working right around the lights through the center of my painting here. And up close it might look like too much, but, you know, like I say, step back and take a look and see, are you too much? You might not be. Here, you might not be too much, you know, just I'm building the fronts of these flowers up here with a little more light color here, and it might not be too much here by the time you you know, get it around everywhere and you soften it with some halftones, and then when you step back and take a look at it, step back and take a look at it there. I'm going to take a look at that, and see, that builds a nice light area up in here. See, I see that nice there, so I kind of like that. Now I just got to get a little bit of soft gray definition here. So a little halftone darker right onto that. A little halftone gray darker here. Right up through that, there. And a little halftone. And I'm way back on my brush, so I keep that tip nice and soft here. Keep that tip nice and soft here. There we go. Sometimes I like that, just coming back, and what that tonal strokes do like that to your flower is really pretty. Adds a lot to your flower. And working these softer tones. Let's get a little more light back here. This is the light side of that petal there. There, like that. Let's go a half-tone shadow. Some green and some of your red violet, or not red violet, but your quinacridone. That grays that down, pushes that down. Let's get just a touch more of our quinacridone right over here. So we get that nice cool pink right in there, like that. Let's push that little bit of that grayed light right there. And I think I'm going to call this painting, because we don't need to play with it too much more. There comes a point where it's a painting, and it's time to stop, otherwise it'll become stiff from playing with it too much. So there comes a time when it gets, and I'm right about there, when it's time. I just want to turn this bowl a bit here, so I need to go a half tone lighter so I can set that light petal up on top. Just kind of turn that bowl right there. Just a touch, and a little bit of the cool color where they come together there. Like that. So it turns that, and that looks good there, that looks good there. And I don't really have too many of my light green petals. I could just one time, let's take some of that Hansa and some of our pine green and a little bit of light. And let's just express a real nice light green. Not anywhere near, I'm about 2 values down from the lightest of my rose. But this will be a real pretty light little green, especially right up here towards the light side of my composition here. Here, like that. And really kind of, that's really pointed out of the composition. So I'll just round that down just a bit. Really kind of sets that nice light there. Let's drop that right down here. It'll gray it down, green it down. And I've put just a bit of that up here onto this one. That'll be a good position for it. Maybe a light little vein line right there, like that. Let's work just a bit of that. We like that green coming out here. Maybe a bit of that right out here. Here, like that. That's pretty good. Maybe a nice transitional touch of that, so it's a little bit of that right in there. That'll transition over to some of these other ones as they go around. So just little touches like that. But that gets a bit of that nice green in there. And let's take a touch of that green, little red violet in it and push that contrast right into that center now. That hit that too much, a little too much. But I got lots of nice light texture of that white, and I'm just going to push that around a bit there. And I like that. I still like that through light right through there. I like that. And yeah, I think that's good. I think I'll just leave a few little things coming down. I really love to put stems and extra little things around too, but I don't think, well, maybe I will put a suggestion of a few stems here, coming down like this, because it gives the downward motion here. Just a few suggestions of those, right down and off the board here. Just pine green and a little red violet here. Down like that. Just boom. And I think that's good. I think I'll, I don't think I'll do too much more to that little, sometimes I'll put, this is a high contrast. Now there's a lot of artists that do that and like that, putting little edges like that, little touches of, of a contrast color. Again, it's up to whether or not you like something like that, and I do sometimes in a painting like this, and little ideas of the contrast, marks, what we call marks, strikes of color, marks of color, and that would be stems and other little things going on, and especially into a casual painting like this, that little blotches of color like that just add quite a bit, and you want to change the tone fairly often when you do something like that. But these little marks like this really are quite suggestive and quite nice within a painting. They can, like here, I can push that. It actually raises the back edge of this rose up, makes it more part of the composition than sitting into the background here. But yet not so much in front of that, in front of this other thing. So it gives you, dimensionally, they can give you some additional depth within your painting, So they're kind of good as long as you use them with restraint. Don't get too carried away with them. You can do some nice things with them, and to your composition. So I had just a couple of that, a little bit more of that right in here. And then I think I'm going to call this painting, because that looks pretty nice. Looks better than that one there too. Okay, there you go. Thanks very much. I hope you understand that. Working back and forth the half tones, you need to look at your palette here. You see I'm working towards the end of my painting. All my tones in here, appear very, very soft. There's the suggestions through it are very soft. And that's normally how I come through to finish a painting, is I go through, just like in the book in lesson number 1, I go through painting a very slow progression. Whereas when I usually when I start something, I really like to go in and put in that contrasting stroke, and then I look for the halftone. And then if I need 2 or 3 more halftones, I'll soften those in 2 or 3 more, different ways. And you'll see that in the last lesson of the book. You'll see I do that. So those of you that don't have the book, it's Mastering Roses Volume 7. This video is to go right along with that as a nice teaching video of the halftone technique. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time. Look for more of our educational videos over on JanssenArtStore.com. We have a lot of them there. We have the entire Mastering Rose series where we talk about all different kinds of things. And, you can look for those over on our Jansen Art Store. And I just saw this when I was looking at that. I thought, God, that's just a little plain there. So I'm just going to put a little bit of movement of color there. Now I'll clean my brush out one more time. All right, thanks a lot. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for joining me. I had a great time with you. See you later. Bye-bye.